Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here in one format or another. The time is 12:04, and I will call to order the December 8th, 2022 meeting of the Contractors State License Board. I'm Mary Teichert, CSLB's board chair, and we're going to conduct a hybrid board meeting today. The board members here in Sacramento, you can see at this table. The remaining board members are at the San Francisco Water Power Sewer Contractors Assistance Center, and you can see them on a different screen. We are joined here together by WebEx and the video screen. So board members, we will be using cameras during the hybrid meeting. To mitigate potential bandwidth issues, we ask that you turn off your camera when you are not speaking. I'm thinking it since it's just Diana, we have to worry about that. Yeah, since we're assembled in two main spaces, we're not going to worry about that. And Diana, we're glad to have you as well.
Thank you.
Jason Perez is our host and moderator today on this Zoom call. So roll call. So Mariah, could you please note for the board records that Rodney Cobos has an approved absence? And can you please confirm board member attendance and call the roll?
Mary Teichert.
Present.
Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre.
Here.
Miguel Galarza.
Here.
Susan Granzella.
Here.
Alan Guy.
Present.
Jacob Lopez.
Here.
Diana Love.
Here.
Michael Mark.
Here.
Steve Pinelli.
Here.
James Ruane.
Here.
Johnny Simpson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we will have Board Secretary Michael Mark lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, if everyone can please rise, take off their caps if you have one. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I would like to take this occasion to recognize Christopher Perone, who has been appointed as CSLB Board Counsel. Have I got your name pronounced correctly?
That's correct. Thank you.
Perone? Yeah, welcome.
Nice to meet you.
So joining Christopher at the table is John Cumming, who has been doing an outstanding job as board counsel on a part-time basis. We hope John will continue his part-time work with us. For those of you participating in Sacramento, you may have noticed the cool temperature of 67 degrees. A request has been made to building management to raise the temperature, but in the interim, we will all be able to stay awake. Yes. Okay, so we are now moving to agenda item B, which is for public comment and to request agenda items for future meetings. The board values public input as part of our consumer protection mission. To allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business today, I'm limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments don't involve an item on today's agenda, this would be the time when you can make them. If you have comments on one of our agenda items, we encourage you to wait until we get to that item. We will give you an opportunity to make your comments at that time. We also ask that your public comment relate to the agenda item currently before the board. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and board members are not allowed to act on any item not on today's agenda. Second, if you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda of a future meeting. Finally, if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charge pending before the board, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. That's because board members may be the judges and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. For everyone's information, as a result of our hybrid setup today, we will be calling for public comment in 3 locations. These include here at the Sacramento headquarters, also the San Francisco Water Power Sewer Contractors Assistance Center, and online WebEx participants. So members of the public, if you are with us on WebEx and would like to make a comment, please use the chat feature to send the host a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you are joining us on the phone and would like to make a public comment, press *9. We will take any WebEx comments first, followed by telephone comments. We will use the same system throughout the meeting for public comment during each agenda item. You will find instructions on how you can make public comments on the agenda for this meeting posted on our CSLB website. So at this point, I will pause and ask for comment. So here in Sacramento, do any board members have an item they would like placed on a future agenda? Okay, seeing none in Sacramento. In San Francisco, do any board members have an agenda item you would like placed on a future meeting agenda?
We do not.
Thank you. And now we'll call for public comment. Is there any public comment here in Sacramento? Okay, seeing none. Jason, can you please check to see if there are any members of the public who wish to address the board or offer a possible agenda item for a future meeting?
We do not have anybody online.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we will turn to agenda item C. Oh,
From the chat that said
Excuse me.
yes. Agree.
Chap said what?
That there was a,
Sorry, board chair. You have one that came up right now.
Okay. What is the,
James Alvarez, I'll be unmuting your line.
I can't hear it. I'm sorry, can you say that again?
It's James Alvarez.
Am I
Okay,
on?
yes.
Yes, you're online.
Okay, I had some concerns regarding the licensing and policies in the state and proposals for optimization of current policies. In the state, we're facing obviously higher costs of construction, budget concerns, labor strikes that are directly involved with our industry. And we know that the state is one of the most broadly and onerous licensed state in the nation, licensed more low-income occupations than any other. With the passings of Bill 216 and 607, it's only going to make these worse. And in February, Phil Scott from Vermont faced similar legislation, and his stance was these bills and licensing policies favor more established businesses, firms, insurance companies over our industry pretty much. And they shot down their contractor registration bill. So there's no registration, no licensing. And I take the same stance as Phil Scott because it's important that we have more contractors and build more housing right now than add more costs to the industry. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
Yep.
Are there any other comments?
We
Okay.
do not have any.
All right, I appreciate that. So now we will turn to agenda item C, which is presentation of certificates of recognition. So today we are recognizing CSLB staff member Pedro Dueñas of the CSLB Testing Examination Department Unit. Lovely, welcome Pedro. So Pedro has been with the Testings Examination Development Unit since September of 2017. In that time, he has consistently managed development of 10 to 14 trade examinations simultaneously. He also did the background research for creation of the new C49 tree and palm classification and worked with the D49 tree service contractors to build the new examination. This work consisted of job audit interviews, creating an occupational analysis survey, analyzing the results, training subject matter experts in item writing, and working with them to create the new item bank of almost 400 items and set the pass point for the examination. He completed this process and the exam is ready well ahead of the January 2024 release date. In addition, Pedro will be managing the 10 examinations we are having translated into Spanish for CSLB candidates. On behalf of the board, thank you, Pedro, for your excellent work and your dedication to the CSLB testing program. Thank you. Yeah, that's terrific. Do I have any comment for Pedro? Here in Sacramento, are there any comments from board members in Sacramento? I'd like to augment our official comments with personally saying we really appreciate the help. This is an important classification and that's a lot of work. So thank you for all your investment on behalf of the public. Is there any comment from board members in San Francisco? Okay.
No.
Okay, and Jason, any public comment remotely?
No public comment.
Thank you very much, Pedro. We appreciate it.
I would like to make a comment, Mary.
Oh, Pedro, are you still with us? Yep. Thank you. I haven't caught you just in time. So, yeah, our board member Diana Love has a comment.
I just wanted to very quickly say thank you for all the work that you have done in the field that you have brought to us. It is very important, everything that you have done to see to it that our exams are done and conducted efficiently. So thank you very much for your time and all the work that you have done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
I
for
really
speaking up.
enjoyed the project. I learned a lot of stuff and worked with a lot of great people.
Wonderful. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will move to agenda item D, the review and possible approval of board meeting minutes and committee meeting summary reports. We will begin with the August 30th and 31st, 2022 board meeting minutes, which begin on page 9 of your packet. Board members here in Sacramento or remotely in San Francisco, do you have edits to the August 30th and 31st, 2022 meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the August 30th and 31st, 2022 board meeting minutes?
Motion to approve as presented. Michael Mark.
Second, sorry.
Okay. Is there any comment from board members in Sacramento or San Francisco? Any public comment here in the room? Jason, any remote public comment?
We do not.
Okay, then Ryan, can you please call the roll?
Mary Tyker,
Approve.
Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre. Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez. Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli. James Ruane.
Abstain.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So next, item D2 is the registrar's report. So I will turn it over to Registrar David Pope. Registrar Pope will now cover both sub-items A and B in agenda item 2, registrar report.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Packer. If we could turn to page 42 of your packet. On November 15th, I had the opportunity to meet with Senate Majority Leader Mike McGuire. He had requested this meeting to discuss CSLB's response to wildfire disasters. Specifically discussed was how CSLB can continue to play a lead role in wildfire disaster survivor outreach. As you know, we have a very robust public affairs response with enforcement staff to make sure consumers are aware of steps they can take to protect themselves. We also, though, discussed how we could be a little more effective. We've had success in working with prosecutors when we've had criminal activity in these areas, but we want to look for ways where we can have a greater presence and be more effective when we have contractors that are engaged in criminal activity, arguably causing these wildfire survivors even additional financial harm. So in discussing this with Senator McGuire, what we came upon is the development or proposed development of a disaster response modernization plan. And the senator would like to, he really expressed his support for whatever, or for the direction the board would want to go for any potential resource needs that we would have. So, for background, and he thought there was a need for a consultant, for someone to really look at the resources that we currently are able to redirect to wildfire areas. It can pose a challenge. We have staff that already have assigned work, and when a disaster hits, we have to reassign staff to go to the local assistance centers. We have a need to jump on the criminal investigations quite quickly. And that can be a challenge when the investigators that would normally handle those type of investigation have other assignments. So what I'm proposing today is that we revisit what the board approved on August 30th. And if you recall, that's on Actually, what the board considered is on page 68 and 69 of the packet. The board authorized staff to use to hire a consultant and spend up to $75,000 to do specific items. I'm going to read those here this afternoon. The first is to evaluate the scope of unlicensed practice and evaluate CSLB's reactive and proactive enforcement investigation needs. Consider possible staff reclassification, review workload production goal analysis, like how much work we can expect the staff to perform, and then prepare a written report of all findings. Now, after the board approved that, we reached out to various potential consultants, and they are listed in your packet. I hope you just touched on them today. We talked to the Department of Consumer Affairs Organizational Improvement Office. We talked to Cooperative Personnel Services. Now, Cooperative Personnel Services has been instrumental in the past in helping us with reclass. They were instrumental in helping us reclassify our investigators to special investigators, as an example. And I contacted Ben Frank of Ben Frank Management. Ben Frank has been a consultant for the board off and on for the last 20 years. He's also been a consultant for the DSA boards and bureaus. The consensus in talking to all three of them is that this is an overreach. We're not going to be able to find one consultant to do all of that. It's really three separate issues. It's evaluating the scope of unlicensed practice, it's looking at our existing resources, and then it's considering a reclassification. So what I'm asking the board to do is two things. First, to revisit what the board previously approved and to limit the scope to 3 items. So I've listed them in the packet, I believe. The first would be to research the scope of unlicensed practice. Now that goes hand in hand with strategic objective 2.2. That consultant would also look at the resource needs to effectively address unlicensed practice. And third, to review the resource needs to respond to declared disasters. So the goal here would be to use the $75,000 the board previously approved to look at those 3 items. Now, I'm also proposing that we receive authorization to hire a second consultant. And this would be to perform the workload production goal analysis. It was included previously. We believe we need to have a separate consultant for this. We've done research as to what this could cost. Our idea would be to reach out to the State Department of Cal Human Resources. We understand that they perform these kind of studies. I was told that the cost to hire that consultant could range between $50,000 and $100,000. So it's not cheap, but what that consultant would look at is whether or not the goals the board put in place in 2006 are relevant today. And those goals were that the goal for the investigators that are assigned to our investigation centers was a weighted closing average of 10 per month. Now, the idea is, and they've done this consistently for many years, they would close 10 investigations, 30% of those result in a legal action. One of those legal actions gets an unlicensed contractor, 2 are generally against licensees. That's what we've worked under, and that's how we managed our workload since 2006. Things have changed since the pandemic. The production has decreased somewhat, and this is something that our staff has asked for. It's also something that the California State Law Enforcement Association, the union represents our investigators, has requested. So that's what I'm putting before the board today to reauthorize the $75,000 for 3 specific issues, 3 specific items, and also to consider spending up to $100,000 to hire a private consultant to do a workload study. It's like a work and motion study to look at the cases, how complex they are, how much time it takes to perform certain tasks.
Thank
Happy
you.
to answer questions.
So David has explained the staff recommendation.
Check with Dana on that, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so we will be asking for board and public comment as we make these 2 motions, make a motion and ask for comment.
Prior
Okay.
to the motion,
Pardon?
prior to the motion.
Okay, so is there any comment prior to motions being made? Anything from Sacramento? Anything? Oh, yeah, Michael.
Michael Mark here. I do have a comment. I do appreciate Dave and the executive leadership team understanding the need for these 2 kind of separate studies. because the enforcement portion is just too much to do within that $75,000. And I think that's huge. The portion of the $100,000, and this is where the question in line is maybe, I don't see Stacy, Paul in the room. Would this be the same line item budget portion, line item as the original study?
Yeah.
Okay, so that answers my question. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from San Francisco? Okay, Jason, do we have any public comment before we have any motions?
Yes, I do have a public comment. Yeah, I am unmuting your line.
Would the member of the public like to go ahead and make the comment? I'm not hearing anything here, so.
Yeah, her line isn't unmuted. I sent her the request.
Having a little trouble hearing you. Is this technical?
There she goes. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Can you go ahead and make your comment? We'd be glad to hear what you have to say. Is there still a member of the public that would like to comment?
Sorry, Cynthia, we cannot hear you over here.
I wonder if they could put something in the chat room.
Oh, is the member of the public who'd like to comment, would you like to put it in the chat room? Because we're having trouble hearing you. Jason, can you see if it's possible to put it in the chat room?
Yeah, it is possible. It does not have it yet.
Okay. We'll wait a minute to see if we can figure that out. Any progress?
No, I do not see anything at this time.
Okay. I can move forward.
I think so. We can
Okay.
circle back.
Yeah, we can also continue having comments after we've made some motions. The staff recommendation would require 2 separate motions, which I will read now. So the first motion is to amend the board motion made August 30th as follows. Authorize the expenditure of up to $75,000 to hire a private consultant to research the scope of unlicensed practice, review resource needs to address unlicensed practice, and review resource needs to respond to declared disasters. Do I have a motion to approve the first staff recommendation I just read?
Michael Mark, I'll make a motion to approve that amendment to the original $75,000 study.
And this is Diana Love. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Now, is there any comment from board members, either in Sacramento or San Francisco? Okay, and let's ask once again for public comment. Do we have public comment either on the phone or in the chat room, or any way to hear from the public?
Not at this time.
Okay, so Mariah, can you please call roll?
Mary Tyker,
Aye.
Rodney Kobos, approved absence. David De La Torre. I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Aye.
Miguel Galarza. Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli. James Ruane.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I will now turn to the second staff recommendation from the registrar's report. So motion number 2 is to authorize the expenditure of up to $100,000 to hire a private consultant to perform a special investigator workload study. Do I have a motion to approve this staff recommendation?
I'll make the motion. Susan Granzella.
Thank you, Susan. Do I have a second?
Ruane, second.
Jim Rowan, second. Okay, is there any comment from board members in Sacramento or San Francisco?
Michael Mark has a question here. The portion of, in the board packet, $50,000 or less, that's the goal still. I know that's not in the motion, but that's just, it's not to exceed 100,000, but the goal is still to hire someone under $50,000 mark, right, Dave?
Yeah, the goal would be to get it done as reasonable as possible and to let the consultant know that we have staff in our personnel office that can provide assistance. It's just that we were just encouraged to ask for a motion to have a range, but we will try to get it done closer to the $50,000 range if we can. But it's, but if you give us the authorization, if absolutely necessary, to go up to 100,000.
Thank you.
And this is Mary Tykert, so I would agree with the general sentiment of spending less money and being prudent with our resources. And also emphasize that the essence of it is to get a really solid, reliable study. So whatever we need to do to create that output, I don't want to have something that we later second guess the quality of the inputs either. So both those things, hopefully we can do together. Any remote? Okay, is there any public comment? Is there any public comment here in the room? Okay, any public comment online?
Yes, I have Cynthia again.
Okay, we'd love to hear that. Please feel free to make your comment.
She has not unmuted. Go ahead, Cynthia. Please unmute your line. She has since now lowered her hand, so you can go ahead.
Okay, so we don't have any public comment. Mariah, can you please call the roll?
Mary Tykert.
Aye.
Rodney Cobos approved absence. David De La Torre.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli.
Aye.
James Ruane.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, we are now on executive item D3, the CSLB budget update, which begins on page 45. I will turn this over to Chief Deputy Registrar Mike Yamnetsky, who is substituting for Budget Manager Stacy Paul, who is off today.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. On page 46 begins the budget update. And it's important to mention, aside from the governor's authorized approximately 77 million governor's budget, the rest of this is projections because we're still in the first quarter, but our projections are pretty sound and we'll walk through it together. So what we have here is a summary of the budget and a summary of the expenditures for fiscal year 22 and 2023. As I mentioned, the governor's budget is 77 million. If you take a look at our expenditures line, we're just over 80 million. Now, the locked-in board expenditures, the operating expenses, daily business, is at 75 million, which is under the governor's budget. But of course, we have the mandatory external costs, which are always there, and it includes our statewide pro rata, which leaves us if you add all that, we begin with the 7.5 million reserve. You add on the 90 million for projected revenue. We back out the expenditures, and we are looking at a 16.1 million ending reserve at the end of fiscal year 2023. Which is about 2.3 months in reserve. So if you turn on the next page, page 47, through September, we are about 3 months into the fiscal year. We spent just under 6 million a month, which is great. If you think about it, we're at 23% of the budget, and September is 25% through the fiscal year. So that's a positive outlook. Moving down to page 47, the revenue. This is through October 31st, and we are looking at about an additional $5 million in revenue. You can see here there's a 21% increase from this time, the October 31st from the prior year, which means the fee increase is working as intended. Page 48 is the fund condition through 2024. Again, these are projections. But you'll see that if our projections are realized, the 16.1 million or the 2.3 months in reserve from page 46, we discussed in the summary a minute ago, will be realized by next year and then build up to a $2.5 million reserve by 2024. I'm sorry, 2.5 months reserve by 2024 and 18.6 million. Turning to the CMEA account. This will be discussed in more detail in the licensing section. The takeaway here is that the governor's budget each year is $100,000.
Could you say that again?
Not right now. The Department of Finance has approved a $75,000 increase that we ask for each year to try to spend on this account a little bit. That'll be discussed in more detail in licensing directly where that money is directly going to each school. And then if you turn to the statistics, these look pretty good. We have an increase. Let's pull out my notes here. Yeah, so we're up in HIS renewals. We're up in HIS registrations. The bottom of page 50 licenses renewed. It looks like it's down, but these are the peak sessions, which we talked a little bit about the last board meeting. I did check. We are up 3,000 licensees between December of 2021 and December of 2022. So these numbers go up and down over the years, but overall we're an increase in original licenses issued, not licenses renewed. And I think that's it for the budget update. Are there any questions?
Yes. I have a comment, and I'd like to point out that several years ago, we had a much smaller reserve, an alarmingly small reserve, as a matter of fact, but it was during the pandemic and all of that. But I'd like to commend Stacy and management for bringing this to the forefront and having a safe reserve, because it was very important to do that. In the meantime, I do have an additional question on how, when we had to pull out in several years ago for the contact tracing, and did we pulled that money out and it went out of the budget, and we had to, it was the 7.1 expenditure that we were reducing. Are all of the expenses and reductions, are all of those now in our budget as it exists today, or are there any other expenses that we would need to anticipate?
Yeah.
And I know Stacy's not here, and she knows that immediately, but Dave, you have a general idea.
Yeah, I do. So the board did direct staff to reduce expenditures by $7.1 million. And that goal was achieved large part because of enforcement, and a lot of we had to curtail some enforcement activities. We did keep positions open in lieu of filling them, but those restrictions have been released because of the fee increase, so those no longer exist. As far as the redirection of SWIFT staff to contact tracing, I think, Steve, how many staff were redirected? It was almost
17.
17 of our proactive SWIFT staff were redirected for, I think, 18 months.
About that.
Yeah. And so they've all returned, and it's my understanding that we recovered the salary that we paid them while they were redirected. So that's completed.
And that's included in the budget today.
That's right.
Okay, very good. Just always wanted to ask that question, and it's so important. And I also want to commend our prior activities in the fee increases, because now it's showing in a safe manner. So just good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Mike. Is there any other board comment, Mike?
Michael Marker, I'd also like to commend Stacy. I actually was talking with her regarding the budget and answering questions. We went back and forth via email. I explained again to her, at least my goal would be a 6-month reserve. I'll put it out there in the universe, but we'll eventually try to get to that point. When we were talking about the new licensees, I did ask the question of how many of the new licensees were the new residential B contractors, and so we can kind of compare. And the numbers that at least I got, I don't know, spoke with them, who know a lot more than I would, but that was only a portion of it. But if we're looking at like on page 47 of like new licenses and application fees, that's like a big percentage of our revenue that's changing. So that's like showing the good work of us trying to process these licensing information. And also when I was speaking of her, the board expenditures, right now we're tracking like 2% more, right? Because if we're through 1 quarter September, we're at 77%. So what's good is that we are 2% higher for yearly in September. And we're really, really close to being able to, if we're staying at that, December, we're almost halfway there. And she said, currently we're tracking. So that's good. So that was it. Good job, Stacy, to the universe. Have fun. You're on vacation.
Any further comments from board members, either in Sacramento or San Francisco? Is there any public comment in Sacramento? No? Jason, do we have any public comment from remote participants?
Yes, I have Blanca Gomez.
Okay, please go ahead.
So, Blanca, you'll have to unmute your line now. Go ahead, Blanca.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to begin now. So as a community member and facilitator of language, specifically Spanish, and as a public servant of a medium-sized city that's located in the county of San Bernardino in California, I was pressed to join today's CSLB December 8th, 2022 meeting, 2022, to discuss particular things that deal with licensing, testing, licensing application requirements, and non-English resources for aspiring Spanish speakers. Roughly, I believe there's about 80% of them that are non-speakers in the contracting sector. So in the recent years, a handful of non-English speaking constituents have approached me for contracting licenses. The most current one is for contracting to licenses for framing and carpentry. Despite accepting the challenges as a non-certified interpreter of translator, the requester, with whom I have no affiliation, he's just a constituent of the city because I'm an elected official. Current standards that are found to find materials in Spanish and/or books that would translate specific terminology or the entire practice of CSLB testing to no avail. In conversations with the Spanish-speaking aspiring contractor who passed the first aspect that was required by the CSLB, which took him several attempts, by the way, and hundreds of dollars, I found out there were other rigors that were working against this population to function legally, lawfully during job site interactions was one. As you may know, no license means no more than a charge of $500 per project and the inability to bypass the restrictions of lawful approaches to charging. In other instances, similar circumstances have been relayed to me by experienced yet not licensed contractors. They identified themselves as handymen, being able to do all sorts of specializations within the confines of what CSLB allows. Stories are fraught with fraud, taking advantage of unlicensed handy persons to steal their work by not paying anything. These horror stories and more are enlaced with many non-speaking constituents in the county of San Bernardino, particularly in the city of Victorville, where I have represented a population of over 50% Hispanics that continue to suffer discriminatory practices from ill-intended members of society. So looking back at my voluntary desire to aid a current Spanish speaker with the application of translation services, I noted a few discrepancies and unmerited consensual items that infringed and were borderline civil rights contingencies. I'm speaking about the translation form that's found on agenda item F2, found on page 94 specifically. The agreement caught my attention as falling under authoritative entities that may have used systemic discrepancies that border bureaucracies when it comes to the translator having agency, whether they consent or dissent. The best way that I can explain this is a type of written intimidation, so to speak, that if answered or unchecked could jeopardize economically and structurally the applicant's desire to proceed. And translator is and must pass help this member of the CSLB's first line of defense towards achieving the opportunity for a member to obtain a license and maybe the chance for them, in their words, to reach what is called the American dream despite these language barriers. So
Thank you,
if you
Bob.
can refer, yes.
We've reached 3 minutes, so thank you very much for your comment. I think that's a good topic, and thank you for chiming in. We're not on agenda item F, although there are items in this budget related to licensing, so I hear what you're saying, but I don't think we have any further items in this agenda item related to what you're raising. And we've reached 3 minutes, so I think that's the conclusion of that comment. Thank you very much. We appreciate the call and the information. Are there any other public comments?
We do not have any other online.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're going to turn to agenda item D4 of the administrative update, which begins on page 53 of your packet. The administrative update will be led by Mike Maliza.
Thank you, Chair Tykert, and good afternoon, members of the board. I'll direct you to page 54 of your board packets. I'll begin the administration division update with our personnel unit activities, starting with our personnel transactions. So during the first quarter of fiscal year 22-23, CSLB personnel staff completed 33 personnel transactions. This included the addition of 7 employees from other state agencies, 3 new employees to state service, and 3 retired annuitants. Within CSLB, 9 employees were promoted and 10 transferred to different positions. In addition, 1 employee accepted a training and development assignment. At the top of page 55, you will see a report on our vacancies. CSLB averaged 52 vacancies out of 425 authorized positions in the first quarter of fiscal year 22-23. An average 48 vacancies in the first month of the second quarter. Personnel unit continuously works with CSLB hiring managers and Department of Consumer Affairs, DCA, Office of Human Resources to identify and minimize any delays in recruitment, especially for our key positions. Moving on, I will discuss our employment recruitment efforts, which is also found on page 55 as well. In partnership with the Employment Development Department, EDD, CSLB participated in a job fair provided to California's veterans on Tuesday, November 8th at the B.T. Collins U.S. Army Reserve Center in Sacramento. This event was a great opportunity to introduce veterans to job openings at CSLB. Job fairs like this serve as valuable opportunities for those seeking employment or career changes to ask questions about how to apply and obtain a state job, and to get information on different jobs opportunities available here at the Contractor State License Board. CSLB will continue to work with DCA, the California Department of Human Resources, which is CalHR, and other organizations to partner and participate in future career fairs statewide. At the bottom of page 55, you will find the update regarding our biannual language survey. This survey is conducted every 2 years in accordance with the Aleatory Bilingual Services Act, which requires every state agency to conduct a survey identifying the public it serves, the languages spoken, and the bilingual resources available to ensure equal access to information. The results will be used to determine CSLB's needs for bilingual services and to provide a basis to certify and appoint additional bilingual employees. Moving on to page 57, you'll see updates regarding CSLB's facilities and contracts and procurements. Most notably are the closures of our testing centers in our Norwalk, San Jose, San Bernardino, and San Diego locations as we transitioned to our testing contractor, PSI. On pages 58 and 59, you will see our contracts, procurement, and training activities for the last quarter. This concludes my administration division update. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. So do any board members have a comment?
I guess Mike Mark has a comment. Like one talking, so apologize, board members. A question for you, Mike. On page 55, there was the portion of 2019 to 2020 vacancies, and I know COVID hit us really tough as a board, and that's pretty much where we were tracking for level, and now we're roughly on the 45. With telework and everything happening, do you see us being able to ever kind of get back to those 20 numbers of vacant positions?
We're hoping so. We're working very hard on that. It is a challenging job market right now. So we're doing everything we can to make it easier for people to, one, know about the job vacancies here at CSLB. We're doing proactive activities as well, as we're partnering with EDD and something CalHR. They have our name on their contact list whenever they have job fairs, especially in underrepresented communities. We're going to go out there. You're going to see more of this activity, more of these reports coming out more. But that's a great question. Yeah, we're hoping to get the low number.
So we're still working through the pandemic. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Mike.
Absolutely.
Any comments from board members in San Francisco? Okay, and is there any public comment, Jason, from anyone participating remotely?
We do not have any online.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next, please turn to page 61 of your board packet for the information technology update. And Jason Perez, we would welcome your update on the board.
Thank you, Board Chair Tykert, and good afternoon, everyone. On page 61 begins the information technology update. The IT division is excited to start our next business modernization project. We have reviewed multiple software applications, and we are excited that we have chosen one, and excited about their experiences and success stories that other counterparts have had with this software. In addition, as part of the initial phase of this project, we are preparing our application to the California Department of Technology, otherwise known as CDT, who has invited departments and entities to submit business challenges that require an IT solution to modernize government and improve digital services for California residents. If our application is accepted by CDT, the Technology Modernization Fund will provide funding to CSLB to complete this project. We continue to place a priority on security, and recently CSLB IT started the deployment of our next generation virtual private network, or better known as VPN, which will encrypt all network traffic from a CSLB managed asset to our secure site. This next generation VPN service requires multi-factor authentication and only allows for state-owned devices to be connected to our state network. At the time of the board packet printing, it was our understanding the California Department of Military was scheduled to complete our biannual cybersecurity assessment for CSLB's infrastructure. Unfortunately, the Department of Military had to reschedule due to a resource constraint. The assessment has been moved to March of 2023. This will conclude the information technology update. I am available if the board has any questions.
Thank you, Jason. Do any board members here in Sacramento have a comment? Any board members in San Francisco have a comment? Is there any public comment in Sacramento? Seeing none. Any public comment online, Jason?
Yes, I have Blanca Gomez again.
Okay. Blanca, do you have a comment related to the information technology item?
Unmuted. On
Go
F2,
ahead,
we
Blanca.
have someone on the phone that wanted to speak on F2, and that's what I was trying to let you guys know.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we're not there yet. We're still on D.
Oh, okay.
All right. So any comment on the information technology update, item D? Jason, is there any other comment on the phone?
We do not.
Okay, thank you very much for your update. Now we will turn to item E, enforcement. So we are now on the enforcement section of our agenda, beginning on page 65, and I will return it over to Enforcement Committee Chair Michael Mark.
Thank you, Chair Tykert. As Chair of the Enforcement Committee, I am pleased to present this update for the Enforcement Division. Starting off on agenda item E1, review, discussion, and possible action on enforcement strategic objective 2.2. The first agenda item for Enforcement Division is E1, which begins on page 68 of your board packet. This item is an update regarding strategic objective 2.2 in CSLB's 3-year strategic plan. and it involves the recommended hiring of a consultant to review division operations. This item substantially overlaps agenda item D2 and the background and recommendations that were already covered by Dave Bowe in his registrar's report. So if there is no questions, I'm going to begin my report with agenda item E2, the enforcement program update. Are there any questions in Sacramento? None. Are there any questions in San Francisco? Seeing none. Are there any public comments? Looks like no public comments. So we're going to move to agenda item E2, enforcement program updating positions as of November 3rd, which is a vacancy rate of 11%. 8 of these vacant positions had candidates selected and pending approval for hire. The division has successfully hired several new employees, but it is just keeping even with the vacancies caused by retirements, promotions, and separations. One of the key investigation highlights is moving on to the next item in your agenda packet. We're going to highlight the results of 2 impressive investigations completed by the Enforcement Division staff. In the first case, I'm going to butcher this name, and I apologize beforehand. In the first case, Norvitas Seneca and 2 salespeople operating as Eco Technology devised a scheme to defraud multiple homeowners in the greater Los Angeles area. They targeted low-income homeowners, many of whom did not speak English, and used fraudulent property assessed clean energy, better known as PACE loans, and their victims' names for their own profit. The case was complex, with multiple victims detailing financial records and over $1 million of fraudulent transactions. Thanks to expert investigative work by one of our CSLB peace officer investigators in the LA District Attorney's Office, Seneca and his accomplices were arrested and booked in the county jail on October 27th. Seneca has been charged with 159 felony counts of criminal conduct, and his 2 associates were charged with 102 and 91 felony counts. The charges include residential burglary, grand theft, identity theft, false impersonation, forgery, and financial elder abuse. The next highlighted item in your packet reports the indictment of Jay Soderling of Aurora Ridge Homes by the Butte County District Attorney's Office on September 5th. Soderling, who has a long criminal history, defrauded multiple survivors of the deadly 2018 Camp Fire in Paradise, who were trying to rebuild their homes. He took hundreds of thousands of dollars from fire victims, but he abandoned the projects before completion. He has been charged with felony contracting without a license in a declared disaster zone and misdemeanor charges of false advertisement and charging customers excessive down payments. Moving on to the general complaint handling statistics. A summary of the Enforcement Division activity during the first quarter of this fiscal year begins on page 73 of your packet. The first entry in this section shows that the Enforcement Division opened almost 5,000 complaint investigations during the quarter of July, August, and September. This represents a 10% increase over the same period last year. Both the number of pending complaints and the number of aged cases are above the division's target levels. As of September 30th, the number of pending investigations was 4,405, which is 15% above the target level. Of those 4,405 open investigations, 231 are considered aged or over 270 days old. The board's goal is to keep the number of aged cases below 100. A few of the division's accomplishments for the first quarter of the fiscal year are starting on page 74, which includes over $9 million of restitution returned to financially injured consumers, 153 cases referred for criminal prosecution, 53 accusations filed for license, revocation, or suspension, 372 administrative citations issued, and $564,000 of civil penalties collected. Moving on to the SWIFT portion of the packet, beginning on page 75, you will find a summary of active CSLB SWIFT team items. SWIFT handles CSLB's proactive enforcement efforts and conducts undercover sting operations, performs enforcement sweeps of construction sites, and responds to reports of illegal construction activity in the first 3 months of this fiscal year. SWIFT investigators did conduct 5 undercover sting operations, participated in 73 of enforcement sweeps, and responded to 232 leads. In total, SWIFT completed 835 investigations, which resulted in 94 referrals to the local DA's office, 147 citations issued, 25 letters of admonishment issued, 88 stop orders issued for a lack of workers' comp insurance, and 319 advisory notices issued for minor violations. Finally, on page 77, it provides a list of recent division training provided to staff. And I'll highlight the first item. In mid-August, 15 CSLB investigators attended the investigator training program presented in Coronado by the National Association of State Contractor License Agencies. And in September 20, 20 investigators attended the National Certified Investigator Basic Training course presented by the Council of Licensure, Enforcement, and Regulation. It remains a strategic goal of the division to re-institute an in-house CSLB Enforcement Academy. I'm pleased to report that plans are underway to begin the academy as early as February 2023. That brings this item to a close. So we heard that quick report. Are there any comments from board members here in Sacramento? Seeing none. Any comments from the public here in Sacramento? Seeing none. Are there any comments in San Francisco from board members? Looks like no comments. It's hard to see from here. So maybe Jason, you could just say no comments.
I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to agenda item E3. So starting on page 79, this is the report. There's not much in the packet. The next 2 agenda items are updates on CSLB's efforts to address solar energy complaints. I'll start with an update on a joint agency solar task force. In March of 2019, CSLB joined with the California Public Utilities Commission, better known as the CPUC, and the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, better known as DFPI, all these acronyms, to form the Joint Agency Solar Task Force. The agencies entered a memorandum of understanding to leverage their collective resources to provide outreach and assistance to solar consumers victimized by predatory solar sales tactics. The MOU enhances efforts to ensure that consumers know their rights and remedies and establishes mechanisms to document, track, and address complaints across agencies. The Joint Agency Solar Task Force meets quarterly and established 3 working groups with representatives from each agency that meet throughout the year. The groups are focused on preventive outreach and education, coordinated enforcement opportunities, and complaint tracking and reporting. Continuing our partnership with the Joint Agency Solar Task Force and industry partners that include the California Solar and Storage Association, for the past 5 years, CSLB has averaged 80 consumer-filed solar complaints per month. This fiscal year, the average increased to more than 158 per month, with 223 consumer solar complaints filed last month. Task Force succeeds include development of the solar consumer notice that must be included in all residential solar contracts, and the development and distribution of consumer protection information. Within the last 30 days, CSLB has put an alert on the CSLB webpage regarding contract payment restrictions, issued an industry bulletin reminding contractors of home contract requirements that include not requesting or receiving progress payments that exceed the value of work performed, and issued a press release on November 30th, 2022, announcing that a CSLB investigation resulted in 3 people being charged with burglary, grant theft, and division of construction funds. And one other solar fraud investigation I will highlight relates to a Los Angeles District Attorney criminal filing. On October 27th of this year, the LADA issued a press release announcing that 3 people have been charged in a 159 count complaint with identifying theft, identity theft, grand theft, and residential burglary. A peace officer in CSLB Special Investigation Unit was instrumental in this investigation. I encourage staff to continue to work with government and industry partners to develop strategies to remove predatory contractors from the marketplace and reduce incoming solar complaints. With that, I will ask for comments on the Joint Agency Solar Task Force. Are there any comments from board members here in Sacramento? Are there any comments from members of the public here in Sacramento? Seeing none, are there any comments from board members in San Francisco?
Okay, thank you, Michael.
We're not quite done yet.
Carry on.
Agenda item E4, and an update on SESRP. This is better known as the Solar Energy System Restitution Program. So it's starting on page 82. In partnership with the task force, the CPUC was instrumental in securing a $5 million grant for the Energy Restitution Program, or SESRP. The program is funded from the state's general fund and includes $1 million of allocated monies to pay for CSLB's administrative costs. As part of the task force ongoing consumer protection efforts, the CPUC issued a decision that required PG&E to host a work group meeting after CSLB paid out 50% of the restitution fund. I was pleased to attend this meeting earlier this week. On Tuesday, the purpose of the meeting was to assess the SESRP at CSLB and determine whether there was a need for future funding. It was a lively group discussion with participants representing CSLB, the CPUC, PG&E, consumer advocates, contractors, and public interest law firms. The discussion revealed a general consensus that CSLB has effectively implemented the fund to date. There is concern with the impact of some large contractors who took multiple contracts for projects, front load progress payments, and do not complete the work and ultimately file for bankruptcy. There is also consensus that a future fund would benefit solar consumers, but no decision was made on how that would occur. CSLB will remain involved in the discussion of any future fund to ensure its parameters are clearly defined. There is a statistical update for this fund, which begins on page 82 of your packet. Thanks to recent publicity, this program reach has continued to expand, and as of November 9th, there has been 416 of these claims that have been received from consumers, and 153 of those claims have been approved for payment. Over $2.1 million of restitution has been awarded, and 117 claims have been closed without payment made. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Folk. Can you please comment on this fund status, please?
Yeah, just real quickly. As board member Michael Mark mentioned, we've had a dramatic increase in solar cloud complaints, having a real hard impact on the enforcement division. I mean, we were thinking that getting 90 a month was too many, and now all of a sudden in November we got 232, 150 the month before. And what's troubling about these complaints is that many of them have some very egregious acts. Their money was taken, and often, in many cases, no work was actually performed. So where we're at today is that we do have in your chart about 146 pending. Mariah is our statistician for this, keeps a very close eye on these. And what Mariah's reported is that if we looked at those that are unrelated to one contractor in particular, the average payout being $15,000 per claim, with that and with what we've received against one contractor that's recently received, just in the last couple of weeks, 70 complaints, it's going to expend the balance of the fund. It's going to exceed, the balance of the fund. So we want to be responsible in how we handle this fund. We got into this, we thought it would last us through 2024. But in large part, because of 6 contractors, the fund is going to be expended. I've met with the board counsel, John Cumming, and he's reviewed the statute. And our proposal, what we're planning to do, is to put on the website a 2-week deadline to file a complaint, claim. In doing that, we can limit or at least have an understanding of what our universe is. And we're also going to make it very clear that the statute, when it was set up, doesn't guarantee restitution to anyone. And that we're likely going to have to start paying out maybe 50 cents on the dollar at a certain point, because there's just not going to be enough funds remaining for everyone that's been financially harmed. As Michael said, we did have this meeting. There's some talk about how we might be able to receive additional funding in the future, but it's certainly not guaranteed. There's no plan today. So that's my update.
I'll take my privilege. Before moving on, while I did attend that meeting, there was the pulse of the room was that CSLB was administrating the fund real well. And unfortunately, there was not enough funds for this entire thing to keep moving on. So that they're looking for additional funds. And overall, as a consumer protection agency, we're doing real well of trying to address the needs of the consumer. And unfortunately, these unscrupulous contractors, they go bankrupt and there's nowhere else to reach. There's no bond to go after. So it's the last resort. So applaud CSLB for what they're doing. So with that, I'm going to move on. So Dave spoke a little bit about possible additional funding. And so the success of this solar restitution program has created some outside interest in creating a larger, similar fund for consumers who were financially injured due to projects funded through PACE, the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. As described at the bottom of page 82, the efforts to start a PACE restitution fund are being led by a public advocacy group called Clean Energy Justice. This group has proposed the creation of a much larger restitution fund for PACE projects with legislative funding and CSLB administration. Senator Robert Hertzberg and 5 Assembly members have formally requested that the Assembly Budget Committee fund the proposed PACE reimbursement program with a $65 million budget allocation. Discussions regarding this new reimbursement fund are ongoing, and staff will keep the board informed of future developments. From what I'm being told, there might be someone from Clean Energy Justice that would like to speak at this time. Are they in the audience? Jason, I made they're online.
Yes, we do have one. Stacy.
Can you repeat that name, Jason?
Stacy.
Yes. Can you all hear me? Thank you. My name is Stacy Tutt. I'm a senior attorney with the National Housing Law Project and a member of the Clean Energy Justice Coalition. As has been described in the materials as well as in this meeting, our coalition has been working diligently in order to obtain additional funds for homeowners who've been defrauded by the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. This effort started over a year ago through our efforts to make this budget allocation request. We have been working closely with the CSLB and the DFPI on the development of this and have really modeled it off of the great success of the Solar Energy System Restitution Program. We are continuing in these efforts this year and continue to request and have submitted a budget request for the PACE Restitution Fund, in which we are seeking $60 million in restitution, as well as a $5 million allocation to help in the administration of the fund. As we've continued to monitor what's happening with the Solar Energy System Restitution Fund, our organization is very supportive of that restitution program. And that's why we have looked at this PACE restitution program, modeling it off of that. We're also very supportive of helping in our efforts as well for additional funding or coordination with the Solar Energy System Restitution Program. But if there are any questions specifically about our efforts or what we're trying to do, I would be more than happy to answer those.
So first, is there any questions from board members here in Sacramento? Seeing none, is there any questions from board members in San Francisco?
No.
Seeing none, any public comment? Well,
We have none online.
there's one public comment online. Please state their name.
We have none.
Oh, none. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stacy, for that.
I do have one, sorry. I do have one comment that was put in the chat by Lucien Kupasi. He's making the comment. Great. The down payment needs to change depending on the project, not 10% or $1,000. That's the end of that comment.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Registrar folk, do you want to comment something on that?
Yeah, just to remind everyone that for home improvement, if you're installing solar on a residential property, the down payment is restricted. It's $1,000 or 10%, but it can't exceed $1,000. Now, where there's a problem in the solar industry is what we've seen is that the contract does provide for that $1,000 down payment, but it has a second payment. It's a progress payment that can be up to 75% of the contract price for work that hasn't been either performed or it's not valued at 75%. An example being, they'll request 75% for that second payment for plans, which are generally standard plans were used for other jobs. You could add some panels to them, but the plans and the applying for the permit does not exceed $3,500. This is what we've established through our contacts with California Solar and Storage Association. But yet they're receiving up to $35,000 at that point. The problem is if they receive that payment, they don't do the work. You've got a lot of financial harm occurring. So that's what we're trying to remind the industry. We're trying to remind consumers. Well, they're adhering to the down payment of $1,000. It's the subsequent payments that are causing consumer harm, and we have to keep a real close eye on that. We have to change the marketplace so they're not receiving that money before they do the work.
Thank you, Dave. Are there any board member comments in Sacramento in regards to the enforcement update as a whole? Seeing none, is there any public comments in Sacramento on the enforcement as a whole? Seeing none. In San Francisco, do you have any board comments?
No.
Thank you. I will make a couple comments. A couple things. I do want to make for the record again, the CSLB is always looking for new skiing houses. That is something that for the public to know. Please contact the office. It's very important. So the great work that Swift is doing, will continue to catch those unscrupulous contractors. And then secondly, I had the privilege of attending the enforcement supervisors meeting of all the program managers throughout California here in Sacramento. And it was a great meeting. I was able to get a better understanding of the day-to-day of the tough work that the enforcement division is doing on a daily basis. Great work. It's a great team. It was pretty good, lively conversations on many magnitude. And as a second thing, reminder is for the members of the public who are listening, we are always looking for additional experts in the field. So if you are an expert in your field, please contact CSLB. We do need experts of all the different license classifications to be industry experts. And with that, I'll say thank you. So that includes the enforcement division update. Back to Chair Teicher.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. So we turn now to agenda item F, licensing. So leading us through the licensing and testing portion, beginning on page 85, will be Licensing Committee Chair Jim Ruane. So Jim is in San Francisco, and Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Tiger. Good afternoon.
Is it possible to be a little closer to the microphone? We're having a little trouble hearing you.
How's this?
Great.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, I'm Jim Ruane, providing the licensing division update today. Begins at page 88. Our first item is 1, review, discussion, and possible action to grant construction management education account awards. You may recall at the end of each year, staff comes to the board to review and potentially approve grant awards for the construction management education account. In August 2022, the board requested and received approval from the Department of Consumer Affairs for a budget augmentation of $75,000, which will increase the CMEA's appropriation from $100,000 to $175,000 in fiscal year 2022-2023 to allow for additional support for institutions that offer construction management education. The $175,000 is distributed among 4 institutions selected by the Construction Management Education Advisory Committee. Revenues in the account are from voluntary contributions made by licensees at the time of the license fee payment and are sufficient to support this request. I'd like to ask the board to consider the following motion. Direct staff to distribute the 2022 CMEA grant awards according to the staff recommendation on page 89, based on approval from the Department of Finance to expend $175,000 from the CMEA account. And I'd like to entertain a motion at this time, and please state your name followed by the motion. Do I have a motion and a second?
Second, David Del Toro.
Miguel Galarza and David Del Toro. Are there any comments from board members in Sacramento?
Yeah.
For public comment.
Yeah. Mr. Ruane, there's an error in your script. We apologize. We should ask for public comment and board member comment before the motion.
Okay. Any board member comment? Comments from the public?
No comments from online.
Any comment from board members in Sacramento? In San Francisco? Any comment from public comment in Sacramento? Any public comment remotely, Jason? No. Mariah, would you please call the roll?
Mary Teichert. Aye. Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli.
Aye.
James Ruane.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mariah. Our item number 2 is an update, review, and discussion and possible action on licensing and testing strategic plan objective 1.1 regarding assessing barriers to licensure and outreach to increase licensing diversity of 2022-2024 licensing and testing strategic plan objectives. It's on page 92 of your packet. Item A is review and discussion regarding document translation. To reduce barriers to licensure, CSLB is working with vendors to increase access for candidates who are more comfortable using Spanish than English. CSLB entered a contract with a vendor to translate all 47 CSLB study guides into Spanish. CSLB has received the translated study guides, so both Spanish and English versions of the study guides will be posted to the website by mid-January. CSLB is also working with the IT division and PSI exams to translate 8 of the exams into Spanish by late spring of 2023. Law and business exam plus 7 trade exams. Over 70% of requests for Spanish translations are for these 8 exams. Licensing staff are finalizing a survey for licensing workshop attendees to better serve that community. Licensing staff is also working on a survey to be added to licensing applications to better understand the demographics of license applicants. Collecting demographic data is essential to evaluating where and how to target outreach efforts. The next agenda item will discuss the possible need for regulatory rulemaking to clarify any license examination translator restrictions. However, I would like to hear from a member of the public at this time. I know Board Member Diana Love and Registrar David Fote have been working with Community Leader and Victorville Councilmember Blanca Gomez on opportunities to remove barriers to licensure and further the board's efforts to increase its licensed population. But I believe Blanca spoke earlier in the meeting and used her time already, and she stated her concerns previously for the record. I don't believe that'd be acceptable.
Yes, that's my understanding as well, that she's now on the record with the comments that she previously provided.
All right, thank you. Any comment from board members in Sacramento? Any board member comments from San Francisco? Any public comment in Sacramento? No public comment remotely. Thank you. We'll move right on to item B. Review and discussion regarding possible need for regulatory rulemaking regarding translator restrictions on page 93. Until all examinations are translated into written Spanish, PSI Exams allows examinees to provide their own oral translator. 83% of CSLB examination translator requests are for Spanish. While CSLB is committed to removing barriers to licensure, there is concern that the CSLB translator form, which is very restrictive about translation services, may impose a barrier to minority communities. Licensing Division is reviewing the form to determine if there is a need to draft regulations to implement examination security requirements without being overly restrictive for translation services. After further research, Licensing Division staff will present a plan or possible translator form revisions to the Licensing Committee. Please see the sample of translator form on page 94. Do you have any comments from the board in Sacramento? Any comments from the board members here in San Francisco? Any public comment in Sacramento? Jason, any public comment remotely?
I have a comment or question.
Sure, go ahead.
On page 93 of the board packet, under B, where it talks about translator, what they can and cannot do within a 5-year period, is that something we're going to address today? Because my question is this, is can a translator translate for more than one person? And if so, would it violate those provisions that are there where it says that a translator cannot become a qualifier for another 5 years? But if there's a second person or a group of people, does that limit the translator?
Bob, would you be able to comment on that?
Well, if I could comment on that, I've had communications with our DCA legal counsel and also the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Professional Examination Services. And so this is something that they're looking at. That restriction is not unique to the CSLB. Other boards and bureaus have something very similar. What we're asking, what I'm proposing is that there be a department-wide policy so that the rules would apply to everyone, same rules would apply to everyone. So it's currently under review. We'll report back on their recommendation at the next licensing committee meeting or the board meeting in March.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments?
We have none on.
All right, thank you. Move right on to item number 3, licensing and testing program update and statistical summary. You can find the licensing update on page 98. I will highlight a few items for the board. Regarding applications, the packet on page 99 indicates the processing time for all application types. Currently, processing times are between 4 and 5 weeks. The goal is to drop off all processing times below 3 weeks and maintain this level. To address staff turnover, staff cross-training has been a priority. I would also like to report that the number of pending applications on page 100 has been reduced significantly between 2020 and 2021. As you can see, the number of processed and issued licenses has increased by 2,972, over an 18% increase. This increase is a result of changes put in place by licensing management, such as cross-training technicians to process multiple applications, streamlining application processes by calling applicants for corrections. This contributed to reducing the number of pending applications. As you can see on the chart on page 101, the number of incoming renewals continues to be steady. We are pleased to inform you that renewal processing times are currently at less than 1 week. Shortened processing time is due to licensees taking advantage of our online renewal service. Regarding workers' compensation stats on page 102, as of January 1st, 2023, per Senate Bill 216, the following classifications now require workers' compensation insurance: C8, concrete; C20, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning; D49, tree service; and C22, asbestos removal and mediation. November 1st, 2022, CSLB mailed 28,594 notification letters to the licensees that hold these classifications. In response, CSLB Workers' Compensation Unit received over 1,500 phone calls. The majority of these calls from sole owner licensees who do not have employees. They complained about the unnecessary costs that must incur. On page 111, you will note an update regarding CSLB's license application experience verification program. As the packet states, the CSLB, of course, diligently verifies the experience of all applicants for licensure. In addition, CSLB has a special rule that requires CSLB to randomly perform field investigation of 3% of applications received. At the last few board meetings, staff informed the board that this program was suspended during the pandemic. Today, staff wants to update the board that licensing began referring 3% of applications to the Enforcement Division in August of 2022. Please note on page 107, that telework schedules in the CSLB Licensing Information Center, or call center, have been modified for more consistent phone coverage. The Licensing Information Center, or LIC, has been moved under Public Affairs Division as of October the 1st. You can find the testing update on page 111. CSLB completed the transition to PSI exams on July the 1st. As of December 1st, 2022, PSI exams has administered 16,338 exams, and there are 4,277 exams scheduled. Currently, there are no backlogs in testing. Applicants can take their test at 20 PSI test centers in California. PSI offers after-hours and weekend scheduling as well. Finally, the Exam Development Unit has held numerous in-person workshops to continue occupational analysis and examination development work to update existing exams. Now I will turn it over to Carol Gagnon, Manager of Examination Development Unit, to summarize the Consumer Satisfaction and Applicant Survey on pages 115 to 139. Carol, it's yours.
All right, thank you. So we do 2 surveys for you guys every year. We do one consumer satisfaction for the Enforcement Division, and we do an applicant survey for the Licensing Division. For consumer satisfaction, we've been doing this since 1993. We email this survey. We're modern now. We email this survey to consumers whose cases have been recently closed. This year we had about a 14% response rate, which is pretty good for a survey. 10% is about average, 14% is good. We have 8 questions that are positive to negative range. 6 of the answers moved up a little bit towards more positive, so things have gotten better since the pandemic. Consumers are slightly happier than they were. Our highest rating for consumer satisfaction was 81% for I was treated courteously by CSLB employees. So that is good. For the applicant survey, this survey, on the other hand, is emailed to people who have recently been licensed, who've just gotten their license. We also had a 14% response rate on this one. Again, pretty good. 87% said the process was easy to understand. 86% said they were satisfied by CSLB's service. And 71% said CSLB's communication was timely. So people seem pretty pleased with their application process. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Carol? All right, that concludes the licensing and testing update. FOAD is available if the board has any questions. In Sacramento, any comments from the board members? Board members in San Francisco? Any public comment in Sacramento? Jason, any public comment remotely?
Yes, we have Vince. Can you go ahead and unmute your line? Go ahead and speak, Vince.
Okay, thank you. My name is Vince Cefalu. I'm a marketing manager with Old Republic Surety Company. Couple real quick questions. On the licensing, we're not one of the companies that electronically file. What is the turnaround time for both? if a bond is electronically filed from a surety company, how long will it take for that to show up on the site? And then as opposed to that, we have agents that email the bond in. How long would it take for that turnaround time?
Errol, is that something you can respond to?
That I'm not sure about. That would be more of a thought question, and you might have to research it. The turnaround time for, as far as I understand, this is the turnaround time for those who renew online. How quickly does it get updated as opposed to renew on paper? How quickly does it get updated? Is that correct?
The renewing
For bonds.
the bonds pod?
For bonds, yeah, those are actually instantaneous. So if they do it online, it should be updating our system right away.
To the surety company electronically submits it.
Electronic something this we are about 1 week processing right now.
And sir, I'm not sure who you are, but I mean, are you saying with the electronically filing, it takes a week?
No, you said it was instantaneous pod if it's electronic?
It is actually, we will get a list from the IT with the name, and then our technicians have to go through those and then make sure it is acceptable. So it takes
Okay, so
about.
that's the data dump that comes from a surety company if they're set up for electronically filed with you guys. What about an email coming from an insurance agent or broker with a copy of the bond to you guys if we're not electronically set up as a company, a surety company?
Yes, yes. The ones that come through the email and come through the mail, they will send to our scanning. Once they're scanned into the system, then the technician will process those. It usually takes between 1 to 2 weeks.
Okay, we're entertaining getting set up electronically filed for you guys as a surety company, but our company wanted to know what the difference was and how quickly they get up on the board.
The fastest way, I think the question is.
You answered that. I appreciate it. The second part of this is, where is the new $25,000 bond form? To date, I don't know anybody that has seen it.
We put it on mid-December, right? Early December.
For the 25,000? Yes, yes, we will send out. We will also, we send it out to the surety companies and there is like 7 or 8 of them that, with the surety companies, we get endorsement, blanket endorsement. There is 7 or 8 of them that they are like, they have 1 here, 1 there. We actually sending the mail to them as of today.
Okay, but here's the overall problem with that. From a surety company, an insurance agent, and a broker, and the contractor.
We're over the 3-minute
Someone
contract.
wants to go in and buy a bond on 1/2/23.
Can you
Can't go on
hear
the
me?
surety company's website
Sir?
to get a new bond with a $25,000 penalty. They're still locked in with $15,000.
Sir, can you?
Can't give them the new bond with the new penalty because you guys haven't released it yet.
So, sir, it sounds like we'd like to take this offline. We appreciate the comment, and we're over 3 minutes, but it's obviously an important topic. So can you put your email in the chat?
Jason Perez, could we trouble you to put FOD's email address in the chat? And the gentleman on the line can contact FOD directly with his questions. We're over the 3-minute comment period on this item.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Are you saying put my email address in the chat?
No, we're going to give you our person's contact information and title so that you can follow up directly.
Thank you so much.
And Jason, you got that?
Yes.
Awesome.
Any other comments? Any other public comments remotely, Jason?
Yes, we have a call-in user number 6. I'm unmuting your line.
Go ahead with your comment.
It's not unmuted yet. Hold on 1 second.
I'm not sure if that's coming
Back to me again. Again, it's Vince with OR Surety. You answered my question, so I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Anything else, Jason?
yes. And call in user number 7.
Hola.
Go ahead.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Ana Cortés. Tengo una traductora que me ayude. Aquí es Blanca Gómez.
Hi, my name is Anna and I have a translator and her name is Blanca Gomez.
Tengo una sugerencia.
I have certain suggestions.
Que en lugar de gastar tanto dinero con el que van a contratar para ver quién no tiene licencia.
So in order of spending some extra amounts of resources to do enforcement with the contracting licenses.
Que pongan un programa piloto para tener la papelería de estudiar para sacar la licencia en español y el examen en español.
So I have a suggestion to instead implement resources on a pilot program that you can understand what the processes are when you begin to put materials in Spanish and also the examination in Spanish so you can tailor it to the needs of the people.
Sería muy beneficioso para los dos lados, para la comunidad, progresaría más y hay mucha gente capacitada que nomás necesita adaptarse a las leyes de aquí y beneficio para ustedes porque la gente pagaría impuestos, que mucha gente no lo paga porque no puede agarrar la licencia.
So the suggestion would be very beneficial on both sides. There's a lot of members in the community that are Spanish speakers that would that are qualified but don't have the means in terms of having something related in their language. So once this is implemented in the language of Spanish, we can start to see the capital growth and the taxation begins to grow for the state of California.
Y eso es, se necesita mucho en la comunidad latina porque el impedimento ahorita es el idioma y más escribirlo y leerlo.
So for the communities of Latinx, this would be very beneficial because there's not only the language barrier, but also the written communication that comes along with some of these rigors.
Entonces es una sugerencia con una necesidad grande y beneficiosa.
So if I can restate the same item, it's very important for you guys to understand the needs that the community, the Hispanic community needs. And this is why I'm able to comment today. Hopefully you guys take my considerations.
Thank you for comments. Any other members of the public?
Oh, and we would also encourage you, if you would like to reach out to Fod, he's our licensing division chief, and would be able to also respond and have Spanish-speaking folks respond as well if you'd like to continue that dialogue. And Fod's email is in the chat.
Yeah.
Any other public comments?
Yes, we do have one more. Jason, go ahead. It appears you've disconnected your mic. Jason, can you leave your comment in the chat?
I think we're done with public comment. Hopefully leave it in the chat. This concludes the licensing items on the agenda. Thank you, Chair Teichert. Back to you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, we'll move on to item G, Public Affairs. This section of our agenda begins on page 141, and I will turn it over to Public Affairs Committee Chair Alan Guy.
Thank you, Chair Teichert. I want to begin by welcoming Chief of Public Affairs, Catherine White, who was appointed on October 3rd. Turning to page 144 of your packet, I would like to present the public affairs update, which is agenda item G1. I will cover a few highlights. CSLB works to educate consumers so unlicensed or other unscrupulous contractors do not harm them after a disaster. CSLB staff were at local assistance centers, LACs, after fires in Mariposa, Siskiyou, and Placer counties, and after a mudslide in San Bernardino County. You can find more information about the disaster response outreach on pages 144 and 145. The Public Affairs Office continues to produce videos for promotion on social media and the CSLB website. In addition, staff continues to produce English and Spanish versions of the monthly Get Licensed to Build webcast. The live webcasts have been well attended by those interested in a contractor's license. Pages 146 to 147 highlight the webcasts and videos produced since the last board meeting. We will discuss video and production for the next agenda item. You'll note at the bottom of page 147 that the number of CSLB social media followers continues to increase as Public Affairs works to inform contractors and consumers. Pages 148 to 149 explain more about that growth and outline our social media highlights, which include a post promoting Construction Inclusion Week and the new workers' compensation insurance requirements for 4 classifications. As always, we invite you to follow CSLB on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Flickr. You can find the links on the CSLB website. For stakeholder communications, the public affairs staff have issued several industry bulletins. Since our last update to the board in August, we have issued industry bulletins on new requirements for mechanical systems acceptance tests and bond changes for licensees. In addition, not included in the packet were bulletins issued regarding progress payment restrictions and the workers' compensation insurance requirement. On page 152 is information about CSLB's ongoing media relations work. Public Affairs regularly fields inquiries from the media on multiple CSLB-related topics and distributes news releases when appropriate, such as press releases about unlicensed contractor stamps. Pages 151 and 152 detail the ongoing work with California legislators on our consumer and senior scam stopper workshops. Pages 153 and 154 detail the publication and design services of the Public Affairs staff. They are constantly working on new publications and updating outdated information in older publications. This includes the latest version of the California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. In addition to all this work of our public affairs staff, they regularly update the employee internet site with stories, photos, and informational updates, including for upcoming CSLB events. The public affairs staff continues to further CSLB communication objectives, and we thank them for their hard work and dedication. Since this is an informational item, no action is required of the board. Do we have any public comment here in San Francisco? No. Any public comment in Sacramento? Any comment online?
Yes, we have Jason online again. Go ahead, Jason.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I just wanted, I appreciate Vince calling in. This is about the bond again. And I'd just like to speak on that a little bit again. So we're an agency that writes quite a few of these bonds. And I just want to, basically say the sureties are getting quite concerned that you guys haven't dropped the bond form yet. And what they're most concerned about, obviously, most of them have refiled the rates to match the amount. But several sureties have dropped out of this market in the last few years, and we want to create a competitive market.
Excuse me, sir, we definitely appreciate the topic. You've also had the 3 minutes of public comment that we set up as a ground rule for this event. We would welcome you to reach out to our licensing chief, Fuad, who I believe his email is in the chat. So we encourage you to follow, but we have reached public comment limit on this topic.
All right, well, if the language changes on the bond significantly, it could essentially be a train wreck, especially this close to the bond amount changing. So, but I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Any other public affairs comment?
All right. For the next two agenda items, both related to 2024 strategic plan, we'll turn to Chief of Public Affairs, Catherine White.
Thank you, Alan. All right. Next is agenda item G2, which is about strategic objective 4.4, develop video tutorials on processes and procedures to reduce consumer licensing and applicant errors. So on pages 156 and 157, we explain the process of selecting videos and future videos that are in the works. We'll now show you two of the videos that CSLB television specialist Amy Lawrence developed this last year. First video, CSLB Quick Tips, Renew Your License Online, walks licensees through the online renewal process on CSLB's website. And Natalie, can you please play the first video?
Is it time to renew your contractor's license? If you're renewing a single qualifier license or home improvement salesperson registration, you can renew your license entirely online at cslb.ca.gov. For multiple qualifier licenses, you will need to mail or hand deliver a completed renewal form along with your payment. Let's start by going to cslb.ca.gov. Click on Licensees at the top of the page and renew your license. Here you can see the different options we offer for renewal. If you're a single qualifier, you'll select the first link, which is to renew a single qualifier license. With this option, you can just follow the online steps and pay your renewal and the 2.99% processing fee, which will be added to the renewal cost, and your license will automatically be updated. This page lists the renewal fees for active and inactive licenses, depending on your situation. An active license must be renewed every 2 years and allows you to perform work for the classifications you are licensed for. If your license is inactive, you cannot practice as a contractor or submit a bid for work. Inactive licenses must be renewed every 4 years. If your license is inactive, you do not need to maintain any bonds, workers' compensation, or designate a qualifying individual. You can find more information on inactive licenses by clicking on Licensees on the CSLB homepage and maintain or make changes to your license. Then select Inactivating your license for more details about how inactive licenses work. If you're renewing multiple qualifier licenses, you will want to select the second link on the CSLB online renewal page. That link is Renew Multiple Qualifier Licenses. For this option, you will have to mail or hand deliver your signed renewal, payment, and any required paperwork such as current bond or workers' compensation information. It's very important to mail or hand deliver these items before your license expires to avoid paying late fees and ensure that your license status is updated as soon as possible. We cannot update your license until we get all the paperwork from you. You can mail your paperwork to CSLB at P.O. Box 26000, Sacramento, California 95826. The final option on the CSLB online renewals page is to renew a home improvement salesperson registration. This process is done solely online, so there is no need to mail any paperwork to CSLB. Your license record will be updated as soon as you complete the online process. Remember that renewing on time before your license expires helps keep your license in good standing with CSLB. If you'd like to verify your license expiration date, you can look on your current pocket card or online at checkthelicencefirst.com. Thank you for watching. For more information on renewing your California contractor license, visit cslb.ca.gov/renewals.
Thank you, Natalie. The second video is a Spanish translation of the CSLB Quick Tips Gardeners versus Landscapers, which reminds consumers of the steps to follow when hiring a licensed contractor for outdoor projects. We have provided a version with English subtitles for the board members and audience. Natalie, can you please play the second video?
La primavera está aquí y es hora de eliminar algunos de esos proyectos al aire libre. Entonces, ¿contratas a un paisajista o un jardinero? ¿Y cuál es la diferencia entre ellos? Los jardineros generalmente se centran en el mantenimiento de su jardín, como cortar, desmalezar, cultivar y recortar arbustos. Por lo general, no se les exige que tengan una licencia estatal a menos que realicen trabajos relacionados con la construcción o realicen reparaciones que cuestan más de $500 en mano de obra y materiales. Los paisajistas suelen estar involucrados en el trabajo de construcción al aire libre. Aquí hay algunos proyectos de paisajismo comunes que requieren una licencia. Para proyectos como estos, busque contratistas activos de paisajismo C27 que tengan licencia de CSLB. Algunos proyectos, como los que incluyen césped artificial, revestimientos de piscinas de vinilo o sistemas de riego, pueden ser realizados por un contratista de especialidades limitadas o productos sintéticos C61 o D12. Los contratistas de paisajismo C27 que asumen piscinas, spas o jacuzzis también deben tener una licencia de especialidad de piscina C53 o subcontratar con un contratista que tenga una licencia C53. Siempre recuerde, cualquier proyecto de construcción que sea de $500 o más en costos combinados de mano de obra y materiales requiere una contratista con licencia estatal. Evite ser estafado haciendo su investigación, obteniendo 3 ofertas y verificando referencias y sitios de trabajo. Para obtener más consejos sobre cómo contratar una contratista con licencia, visite cslb.ca.gov.
Thank you, Natalie. Amy also recently finished a video that further details the online renewal process for single qualifier licenses. She's also working on an explainer video about owner builders and an update to the what to expect on test day video since CSLB testing transition to PSI.
Thank you, Catherine. This is an update only item. Do we have any board comment here in San Francisco? Any board comment in Sacramento?
Michael Mark has a comment. That was my first time seeing that second video. It was actually really well produced. I'm assuming there's an English version of that same thing. That's what I'm reading in the packet. So it was a really good video and a good translation. That's all.
Any public comment in Sacramento? Any public comment online, Jason? Great. Catherine will now present agenda item 2.
Thanks, Alan. The final public affairs agenda item is regarding strategic plan objective 4.5, which begins on page 160 and states, developed communications with C20, warm air, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, and C38, refrigeration contractors on energy work in line with Governor Newsom's carbon reduction goals. CSLB staff are planning a industry stakeholder meeting by the end of the year with C20 HVAC and C36 plumbing stakeholders to discuss emerging technologies, possible new classification regulatory updates, and consumer and industry outreach opportunities to review enforcement compliance strategies.
Thank you, Catherine. This is an update only item. Any board comment here in San Francisco? Any board comment in Sacramento? Any public comment in Sacramento? Any online comment?
We have none.
That concludes the public affairs.
Thank you, Alan.
Chair Tiger.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move now to item H, the legislation portion of the agenda, which I will turn over to our Legislative Committee Chair Miguel Galarza.
Thank you, Chair Tiger. The legislative update begins on page 163 of our packet. The first agenda item for discussion is item A, authority to automatically impose license revocation for failure to complete terms and conditions of probation. This legislative proposal arose out of the board's approval of Enforcement Committee's recommendation to implement strategic objectives 2.1, which is as follows. Leverage current enforcement tools to increase licensee and business knowledge by requiring contractors subject to CSLB corrective actions to take specific courses. At the August 2022 meeting, the board approved the enforcement committee's recommendation to request legislative proposals authorizing CSLB to automatically revoke a license subject to formal disciplinary order. The receiving respondent did not complete a specific instructional course. To implement this request, staff has drafted the legislative proposal in your book on page 164 of your packet. The proposal would codify CSLB's existing disciplinary probation authority in CSLB's Practice Act and provide that failure to complete probation by taking specific courses or examinations resulting in reimposing revocation. I would now ask staff to please explain the proposal. Mike or David?
Sure. Thank you, Committee Chair Galarza. So this proposal looks a lot more complicated than it is. I'll try to be pretty straightforward here. So this arose out of, as the committee chair stated, strategic objective 2.1, which was to require contractors take courses as a result of disciplinary action. And that was the goal on the field. Then we started researching this and we realized we need to get on the field a little bit closer before we get to the goal to figure out these laws. So what we have here is in this law book, we have a number of disciplinary guidelines that are in our regulations, which say we have a minimum penalty and a maximum penalty. And all of our minimum penalties include the authority to provide probation instead of an accusation, or instead of revoking a license, we can stay the revocation and provide a couple years probation. So that's all fine and good. Those are in our regulations. Well, we also have the government code, which provides that all license boards can stay a revocation by doing probation, but our laws reference the government code, but they don't actually state that CSLB can put a licensee on probation. And if you look at this proposal, we've got lots of boards and bureaus that say that. So we want to join them. So that's kind of the first part. Then once we clarify that existing authority, we can then go to all these disciplinary guidelines where it says, if you haven't taken a course in 5 years, take the course. Pass the law and business exam. We have all these terms, but we haven't really been able to expressly enforce them. And also, if a licensee doesn't complete the courses currently, because of the lack of express authority, there's not a lot we can do if the exam isn't passed. We have to either reinstate the license at the end of the probationary period, or we do another accusation and pay the AG to have a hearing on just the course. So that's where we're at. And these laws exist in various places. Like I said, we've got the authority to reimpose revocation. In our regulations, we can do it if they don't pay restitution, but that's not in our statute. It's just a big, it's a big effort to bring in different authority that exists early in the VMP code, in the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, and the Government Code, and in CSLB's regulations, put it all in one place, and implement the strategic objective. So that's kind of the rundown. I can answer any questions, but that's the proposal.
Thank you, Mike. So as I understand it, the staff recommendations is that the board approve sponsorship of a legislative proposal that would codify CSLB's existing disciplinary probation authority in CSLB's Practice Act and provide that failure to complete probation by taking specific courses or examinations resulting in reimposing revocation. Further, authorize staff to secure a legislative author and work with the proposed language and stakeholders as appropriate to facilitate the passage of the described proposal throughout the legislature. Are there any comments from the board in Sacramento regarding this item?
I apologize, Committee Chair, I left out an important part. The fiscal impact is none. Our strategic plan was to make sure that we're doing our due diligence with fiscal impacts. It's hot off the press, it's not in the packet. We have this authority and this ability already, so I apologize for interrupting. There is no anticipated fiscal impact for this proposal.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments from Sacramento board? Any comments from the San Francisco board? Jason, are there any comments from the public or WebEx in either San Francisco or Sacramento?
You have none online.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public from Sacramento? I think I said that already. All right. Can I have a motion from the board?
So moved.
Second was Guy. Thank you, Guy. Mariah, could you please call roll?
Mary Tykert. Aye. Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli.
Aye.
James Ruane.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mariah. The next item on the agenda is to authorize or the authority to require applicants and licensees to report their current email address to the board at the time of application and renewal. If you be so kind as to turn your booklet to page 167 of the packet, it will describe the legislative proposal to require licensees and the license and register holder to provide their email address, if available, at the time of the initial licensure and renewal of the board. Staff reports that this proposal is largely based on a recent bill that Senate Bill 1120, which was successfully passed through the legislature and was signed by the governor in 2022. SB 1120 was sponsored by the Board of Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors and Geologists, alongside the California Land Surveyors Association, which in part required licensees to provide email addresses to the board. The bill received no opposition, and according to the legislature, other boards and bureaus within the DCA have worked to update outdated communication requirements in recent years. It should be noted there were some comments from the public that I'm going to recite as follows. As a licensed contractor, I renew my license and conduct paper-based business with the board to maintain my license. As more and more forms and applications are placed online, more and more people are doing business electronically, including myself. I think it would be extremely helpful to licensees if the board had their email address and was authorized to share important business with licensees by mail. You'll note that this proposal protects the email addresses by exempting it from Public Records Act. David or Michael, would you please be so kind to elaborate?
Yes, this one is very straightforward. The language is copied from the bill that the land surveyors got through, tweak a little bit for CSLB. We mentioned earlier in the licensing update, we sent out 25,000 letters to tell licensees a couple of weeks before their insurance was due that there was a bill that affected their insurance. Now, that was all paper-based. Of course, we alerted licensees and the public through our website for months and board meetings for months, over a year, about this proposal coming. But licensees only learn about that if they tune into board meetings or if they subscribe to our listserv. The ones that don't learn about this important information late. This bill would allow us to collect the email address and not provide it if it's requested as a part of a PRA. The fiscal impact requires some programming. Total cost, staff cost with benefits is approximately $8,100. It's about 90 hours of work to figure out mainframes, email addresses, etc. That's the rundown, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I have a quick question on, can I ask, this is Mary Tykert, can I ask a quick question on fiscal impact? So it seems like it would also have a beneficial impact if we don't have to mail things. Is that offsetting, or are we gonna still mail and email?
I think what the board would do is set a policy or do regulations to clarify, hey, what are we emailing? What are we mailing? We're not spamming here. That's not what we're gonna do, but there's important information that needs to go out, and we can figure that out.
Mike, what do we spend with postage and staff time to mail 29,000 letters? Wasn't it like 45 cents a letter?
Yeah, I know if it was all of our licensed population, it would be about $300,000. This was about.
This is a real cost saver.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's an excellent point. It's a more detailed fiscal analysis would provide the offset costs, saving money if not mail.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as I understand it, the staff recommendations is that the board approves sponsorship of a legislative proposal to require license and registration holders to provide their email addresses, if available, at the time of initial licensure and renewal to the board. Further authorize staff to secure a legislative author and work with the proposed language and stakeholders as appropriate to facilitate the passage of the described proposal through the legislature. At this point, I welcome comments from the Sacramento board. I welcome comments from the San Francisco board.
Yeah, again, David Del Torre. I think it's very pragmatic. I mean, now we're in the 21st century. Everything's electronic. I hate to impact anybody's livelihood by because mail handlers are important to our communities, but I think it'd be very cost effective and prudent to communicate and get important information out through email. So, yeah, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, David. Any other comments? Jason, are there comments from the public or WebEx, either here or in Sacramento?
We have none.
Are there any comments from the public in Sacramento? No. Okay. And therefore, I'd like to have a motion from the board.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Bill.
Steve Pinelli, second.
Thank you. That hence, Mariah, would you please call roll?
Mary Teichert. Aye. Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli.
Aye.
James Ruane.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mariah. That concludes the legislative committee update. Back to you, Chair Tiger.
Thank you, Miguel. So this concludes the legislative and regulatory portion of the agenda, and all we have remaining is a closed session, which we will move to conduct an evaluation of the performance of the registrar. This will be our last item for the day. This item is not available for viewing by the public. After closed session, we will briefly reconvene in open session and adjourn. And we will, let's see, and I now ask that the webcast and phone meeting be turned off. We will return from closed session to adjourn. However, the adjournment will not be live streamed. So at this time, we'll take 10 minutes prior to beginning the closed session to ensure the public is cleared from the webcast and both public rooms in Sacramento and San Francisco are cleared. So we'll then take a 10-minute break. We'll reconvene here with the board members in 10 minutes for a closed session at 2:22. Thank you.